We are so excited today to be able to bring to you Professor Xiaoxing Shi. And, he probably wishes he could spend Lunar New Year, the eve of Lunar New Year with his family, Baojiaozi, doing something along those lines. But he's with us today to discuss important questions about competitiveness, about openness, and about scientific espionage, scientific collaboration, scientific exchange. It's really important for us to look at these questions. Now, those of you who have been following us closely know that this is perhaps the fourth presentation in our series looking at this. We have had earlier in this series, we've had John Demers, at that time, the Assistant Attorney General for National Security, and talked with him about the China Initiative. We've had a law professor, Margaret Lewis, who has written a very important article called Criminalizing China, looking at that initiative. And we've had a presentation by David Zweig, a professor from Hong Kong, who is one of the foremost experts on China's talent cultivation programs. But what we haven't had is one of these talents. We haven't had a scientist who, through his own life, his own work, manifests these things. So we are so fortunate to have Professor Xiaoxing Shi with us. He's the Laura Carnell Professor of Physics at Temple University. He's previously taught at Pennsylvania State University, at the University of Maryland. He's carried out research in various commercial labs in Germany and in the United States. And he comes to us after 30 years in the United States, originally from China. He's a native of China, earned his PhD in physics at Beijing University, and then came to the United States. He's a fellow of the American Physical Society, the winner of a number of awards, including the National Science Foundation's Career Award. He's the author of 300 research papers, most of which I need to confess I don't think I can understand, but he is a national treasure. His research focus is on material physics. And he came into national headlines in 2015 when the FBI arrested him, only to drop all the charges 4 months later. Professor Shi has devoted himself not just to his scientific research, but to understanding and talking about the importance of openness, the importance of research integrity, the importance for global advance of science. How can we best make scientific advance possible? How can we ensure that it benefits the people who pay for it, the people who need it? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Xiaoxing Shi.
Thank you so much, Clay, for the kind introduction and the opportunity to speak here. To those who celebrate the Chinese New Year, thank you for tuning in, and a happy year of the ox. The topic today is serious for the holiday, but on this day, we welcome the new and send off the old. I hope the new year will send off the bad policies that I'm going to talk about today. To put the subject in historic context, we need to recognize that the relationship between the United States and China has entered a new era. This is reflected in the policy declarations of both the Trump and the Biden administrations. In terms of America's China policy, we're living in an atmosphere dramatically different than just a few short years ago. And we'll be living in such an atmosphere in a long time to come. One area that has been a major focus of the government is federally funded research. Right before leaving office, former President Trump issued a National Security Presidential Memorandum, NSPM 33, directing federal agencies, universities, and individual scientists to protect national security in government-funded R&D from the interference and the exploitations by China. It was accompanied by a document from the National Science and Technology Council listing a series of recommended practices. This followed many criminal prosecutions of university professors who allegedly failed to disclose their activities in China with in their grant proposals or conflict of interest forms. In 2018, the Department of Justice established a China initiative to prioritize economic espionage cases related to China. On DOJ's China Initiative website, you'll find 9 cases against the university professors as of November 12, 2020, not including the recent case of Gang Chen of MIT and Lin Yang of University of Florida. 7 of the 9 charged are ethnically Chinese. None of the cases alleges theft of intellectual properties, and all are about not disclosing activities in China. The crime charged include false statements or false claims for non-disclosure, wire fraud when you use emails, grant fraud when you have federal grants, and false tax return. The scientific community is a critical participant in the federally funded R&D and need to have a voice on the issues of research security. One document that represents the voice of the scientific community is the Jason report on fundamental research security, a report of a study commissioned by the National Science Foundation and published in December 2019. Jason is an independent group of elite scientists which advises the US government on science and technology matters, most of a sensitive nature. All Jason members have security clearances and access to classified information, and they can speak on behalf of the scientific community to the US government. Before I go on to discuss the Jason report, let me first introduce why I even think I'm qualified to talk about these science policy issues. It all started on May 21st, 2015. I was woken up by loud pounding on my door before 7 o'clock in the morning. I ran to open the door and saw many people outside of my house. Some were armed and some had battering ram ready to take down my door. An FBI agent showed me his badge, asked for my name, and announced my arrest. Another agent turned me around and put the handcuffs on me. I was shocked and asked the FBI agents for what I was arrested, and they wouldn't tell me. In the meantime, the armed agents in bulletproof vests burst into my house, running about and shouting, "FBI, FBI." They pointed their guns at my wife and 2 daughters and ordered them to walk out of their bedrooms with their hands raised. I was worried about how frightening this must be to my wife and daughters. My younger daughter was only 12 years old at that time. When the FBI agents took me out of my house in front of my family, I had no idea when I would see them again. The headlines at the time read that the Justice Department charged me as a Chinese spy, selling sensitive technology to China. The sensitive technology I was charged with stealing was a device called pocket heater. The indictment against me said that a US company, STI, invented the pocket heater that revolutionized the field of superconducting magnesium diboride thin film growth, and I stole it for Chinese government entities in an effort to help them become world leaders in the field of superconductivity. The charges were totally false. I had never shared STI pocket heater information with anyone in China. In addition, this pocket heater was not sensitive at all, and there is nothing revolutionary about it. It was a widely known device originally invented by a German professor. It was not classified, not trade secret, and not export controlled, and it has little commercial value. There were 4 counts against me based on 4 emails I sent to Chinese colleagues from my Temple University email address. Count 1 confirms that certain technology has been delivered to a laboratory in China. But a certain technology was an equipment built by my collaborators in China based on my published results, and it had nothing to do with the pocket heater. Counts 2 to 4 were not even about magnesium diboride, let alone the STI pocket heater. Being innocent does not automatically mean that I will be exonerated. I was fortunate to have found a team of great lawyers for my defense. My lawyer contacted top experts in my research field, as well as a co-inventor of the pocket heater, and gave them all my email communications with Chinese colleagues. After examining these emails, they all concluded in their affidavits that I did not share the pocket heater technology with China. Armed with these affidavits, my lawyers gave a 48 slides presentation to the government on the science of the case and made a request to the government. Find your own expert, give them all my communications with Chinese colleagues, and ask, is there any evidence that Professor Xi shared any pictures, drawings, or schematics of the STI MGB2 pocket heater? We also shared with the government a draft motion to dismiss the indictment, which we were ready to file with the court. It said the government's entire prosecution is based on the presentation of false and misleading testimony to the grand jury, premised on the faulty understanding of basic and non-controversial scientific principles and concepts by an FBI agent who was not qualified to be the government's sole witness before the grand jury. On September 11, 2015, the government dismissed the case, citing additional information came to the attention of the government. Although the charges were dropped, the false prosecution wrecked my life and that of my family. One day I was a respected researcher and department chair. Overnight, I was painted as a Chinese spy all over the news and the internet, and faced the possibility of up to 80 years in prison and $1 million fine. I could not appear on campus, could not talk to my students, and then I was no longer the principal investigator of my research grants. We were isolated and worried about my career, reputation, our lifeboat, the mounting legal fees, and even my personal safety. In those months, we went through a roller coaster of emotions: outrage, defiance, disbelief, sadness, frustrations, and despair. The extreme stress has left permanent marks in our mental and physical health that we are still experiencing today. Once we know how the government prosecutes innocent people like myself, our peace of mind is forever gone. We're now living under constant concern that the government is still reading my emails and listening to my phone calls, and anything I do could be twisted as a reason to charge me. Another effect of this nightmare was to give me a sense of obligation to tell people about what had happened and the lessons I learned from this experience. Lesson number one: when you see a DOJ news release charging someone for stealing secrets for China, it is not necessarily true. In my case, what the government said was totally false. People should always remember that one, the person charged is presumed innocent until proven guilty, and two, what the government charges is not necessarily true. Lesson number two: innocent Chinese American scientists are being unfairly targeted. There is a pattern for innocent Chinese scientists to be charged only for the charge to be dropped or the case collapsed. Before my case, there were National Weather Service hydrologist Sherry Chen and Eli Lilly biologist Guoqing Cao and Shuyi Li. After my case, there were Michigan State Professor Ning Xi, Tulane Professors Ahab Mesohi and Colin Hu, scientist Xin Zhao, and a visiting scientist at the University of Virginia, Haizhou Hu. It is extremely rare for the government to drop cases, yet there are so many drop cases involving Chinese scientists. The third lesson I learned from my experience is that the DOJ is criminalizing academic collaborations with China. It was clear to me during my interrogation by the FBI agents that they knew nothing about how science is done, and they saw routine academic activities as criminal. According to a member of DOJ's China Initiative Leadership and the Steering Committee, academic collaboration with China is by definition conveying sensitive information to the Chinese. Having learned this lesson, I paid more attention to the matters of scientific espionage, open exchange, and American competitiveness. And I'm here today to share with you what I have found. To be clear, we are not denying there is foreign influence by China on American research. With all the classified law enforcement information available to them, the Jason Group did a detailed assessment of how China influences American research, which include rewards, deception, coercion, and theft. They concluded that these actions occur to some degree, but how frequently they occur is not clear. The picture of foreign influence in fundamental research is far from complete, but the threat is there. It can be addressed within the framework of research integrity, not by walling off fundamental research. The Jason report made 9 recommendations. Expand research integrity to include full disclosures of actual or potential conflicts of interest and commitment, and communicate the requirements clearly to all stakeholders. Include it in ethics education and training, in particular for foreign researchers. When the requirement to disclose is violated, the funding agency and the universities should investigate, adjudicate it with consequences similar to scientific misconduct. In my opinion, the Jason report presented a fact-based and balanced solution to a serious problem and should be the basis for our national policy on scientific relationship with China. However, there are many falsehoods propagated by some politicians and the law enforcement officials that need to be debunked. Falsehood number 1, Chinese scientists, academics, and students are non-traditional collectors for China.
There are a slew of what we call non-traditional collectors, businessmen, scientists, high-level academics, graduate students, et cetera, people who are not intelligence officers by profession, but who are, for a variety of reasons, working on behalf of the Chinese government.
In other words, they are Chinese spies. Former Secretary of State explained it in a very stark term.
We know, too, that not all Chinese students and employees are just normal students and workers that are coming here to make a little bit of money and to garner themselves some knowledge. Too many of them come here to steal our intellectual property and to take this back to their country. Communist China is already within our borders.
Chinese students and employees are not normal students and workers. Communist China is already within our borders. Joseph McCarthy said the same in the 1950s. Communists hold US jobs. During the McCarthy era, many innocent Americans lost jobs, saw their career destroyed, and some were imprisoned. Let's hear Joseph McCarthy speak.
One communist on the faculty of one university is one communist too many. Even if there are only one communist in the State Department, that would still be one communist too many.
One communist on the faculty of one university is one communist too many. Even if there is only one communist in the State Department, there will still be one communist too many. These words resonate with what we are hearing today. The question is, are Chinese professors, scientists, and students spies for China? The Jason report answered unequivocally, no. It said that Chinese scholars, either Chinese citizens or US citizens originally from China, are typically not acting as representatives of the Chinese Communist Party or the Chinese government, and are not necessarily in agreement with the aims, methods, or policies of these institutions. They must be treated as fellow residents or citizens of our country, and should be judged on their personal actions and not by profiling based on the actions of the government and the political institutions of China. No matter what America's China policy is, whether the two countries are in a cold war or hot war, it is wrong for the law enforcement to profile Chinese students, scientists, and professors based on where they come from. Falsehood number 2, Chinese students steal American intellectual property back to China.
It's a scandal to me that we have trained so many of the Chinese Communist Party's brightest minds to go back to China to compete for our jobs, to take our business, and ultimately to steal our property and design weapons and other devices that can be used against the American people. So I think we need to take a very hard look at the visas that we give to Chinese nationals to come to the United States to study, especially at the postgraduate level in advanced scientific and technological fields. You know, if Chinese students want to come here and study Shakespeare and the Federalist Papers, that's what they need to learn from America. They don't need to learn quantum computing and artificial intelligence from America.
We hear it repeated by former Secretary of State.
The Chinese Communist Party knows it can never match our innovation. It has state-owned enterprise. It's an authoritarian regime. It is a government-centric focus. It's why it sends 400,000 students a year to the United States of America to study. 400,000 students a year studying in our universities come from one country. It is no accident. Much of the high-end industrial base inside of China is based on stolen technology or technology purchased from other nations. It's not homegrown.
Chinese Communist Party sends 400,000 students a year to the US to steal technology for China. Nothing can be further from the truth. First of all, the majority of the Chinese students in the US are not funded by the Chinese government. Second, under the supervisions of their advisors, graduate students are the people who actually create discoveries and inventions in America. Then after the students from China got their PhD degrees, according to this study, an overwhelming majority, 90%, stayed in the US, contributing to American economic and national security. Many become American citizens. The Jason report said that foreign students are critical to our domestic research enterprise, and some universities' graduate programs likely could not maintain their high level of excellence without them. There are many ways to measure the contributions students from China make to America. Here I show members of National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine who were students from China and are now leaders in academia and business in the United States. Along with immigrants from all over the world, students from China help to make America stronger, more prosperous, and more secure. Falsehood number 3, academic collaborations allow China to leapfrog American research, helping China to take advantage of the taxpayer funding.
The research they're taking over to China isn't just going toward academic purposes. That wouldn't be right either, because our taxpayer dollars are going in to fund this research. They're then leapfrogging us by getting that research.
In other words, academic collaborations with China are bad for America. That is not true. Many US funding agencies run collaborative research programs with China. In this 2012 report to the Congress, the Department of State said that US-China science and technology cooperation accelerated scientific progress in the United States, providing significant direct benefit to a range of US technical agencies. NSF established the POWER program in 2005, jointly funding research projects with funding agencies of many countries, including China's Ministry of Science and Technology, because international engagement is critical to keeping the US globally competitive at the frontier of knowledge. The former head of the NSF Beijing office said, US scientists can access world-class facilities, unique geographic sites, and expertise in a growing number of fields by collaborating with Chinese colleagues. She added that NSF funding can be leveraged in coordinated partnerships with China. In other words, scientific collaborations with China enhances the impact of taxpayer money, leading to more science and engineering breakthroughs. NIH ran the US-China program for biomedical collaborative research since 2006 to stimulate collaborations with China. In 2014, the NIH director told an audience at Fudan University in Shanghai, quoting Louis Pasteur, that science knows no country because knowledge belongs to humanity. Falsehood number 4, US colleges and universities turn blind eyes to Chinese espionage.
Our nation's colleges and universities are so addicted to the tuition money and research grants that pour in from Chinese students and destructive spy programs like Thousand Talents and Confucius Institutes that they turn two blind eyes to the espionage that regularly occurs on their campuses.
In this FBI document published in 2019, the FBI warned US universities that the Chinese government targets Chinese professors, students, and scientists on their campuses to entice them to steal secrets for China. In the NPS News backpage commentary, the American Physical Society leadership pointed out that FBI document does not provide cases of threat relating to unclassified basic research in academia. The fact is that most of us professors do not do secret of sensitive research. What we do is the so-called fundamental research. The principles of freedom to publish and disseminate is so essential to US universities that most of them do not accept the money if the funding restricts its faculty from publishing and disseminate disseminating their results. The Jason report described the National Security Decision Directive 189 issued by President Reagan in 1985, which established a national policy for controlling the flow of science, technology, and engineering information produced in federally funded research. NSDD 189 established a clear distinction between fundamental research and classified research. It has been reaffirmed by the Bush administration and Obama administration and is still operative as our national policy today. NSDD 189 defined fundamental research as basic and applied research in science and engineering, the result of which ordinarily are published and shared broadly within the scientific community. It said it is the policy of this administration that to the maximum extent possible, the products of fundamental research remain unrestricted. If national security requires control, then the research should be classified. In terms of basic research and applied research, there are clear definitions in federal policies and regulations. For example, basic research studies fundamental phenomena and/or observable facts without specific applications in mind. Most professors who receive funding from the Department of Defense work on basic research, or the so-called 6-1 research. The NIH director said it best about the fundamental research in this interview.
Let me ask you a couple of questions on the vaccine. First of all, this hacking issue that apparently the Russians were behind, was NIH targeted, and did you guys lose any key information?
And certainly we are always under cyber attacks of various sorts. But I would say most of what we do in science, we publish it. We put it out there. People don't have to go hacking to find it. We're all about transparency. So I'm not exactly sure what serious risk is involved here. Mischief, yes, but serious risk, I'm not so sure.
Most of what we do in science, we publish it. You don't have to steal it. The concept of stealing open fundamental research is a totally nonsensical contradiction. Falsehood number 5, we need to control unclassified documents because they create classified documents. Listen to this defense lawyer talking about 1,000 grains of sand theory or mosaic theory that is widely held by the intelligence community.
But there was much more we have saying called the mosaic theory, which is that you have 5 unclassified documents, and if you put them together, it creates a classified document. Russia wants to steal the one classified document. The Chinese would go out and try and obtain all this unclassified information and put the pieces together. That's why a lot of academics in the non-security world, or as contractors to United States agencies, especially in the national laboratories with the Department of Energy, were always under suspicion.
You have unclassified documents, you put them together, and it creates a classified document. Here, the FBI says, even if the technology and their applications are not currently classified, they could be in the future. So you can be in trouble even when you talk about fundamental science with Chinese scientists. The only safe solution seems to be not to talk at all, or a complete academic decoupling from China. On November 18, 2019, a Senate subcommittee released a staff report on threats to the US research enterprise. It recommended that the administration should consider updating NSDD 189 and implement additional limited restrictions on US government-funded fundamental research. Federal agencies must assess whether openly sharing some types of fundamental research is in the nation's interest. It is clear that open fundamental research is facing an existential threat. I want to cite the statement on security in science by the National Science Board in October 2018 to emphasize the critical importance of openness to fundamental research. It said, fundamental research is built on open exchanges of ideas and information. These scientific values mirror Americans' ideals of freedom, a combination that has helped our country lead the world in technology, driven our economy, and that in turn protects our freedom. It quoted NSDD 189. The strength of American science requires a research environment conducive to creativity, an environment in which the free exchange of ideas is a vital component. It also quoted National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice. The key to maintaining US technological preeminence is to encourage open and collaborative basic research. The linkage between the free exchange of ideas and scientific innovation, prosperity, and US national security is undeniable. The Jason report took a strong position in this issue. It says NSDD 189, which makes clear that fundamental research should remain unrestricted, is America's national policy and should be reaffirmed. No new restrictions using intermediate level boundaries should be established. Falsehood number 6, non-disclosure of China ties has to be criminally prosecuted. Here, the US attorney in Boston addresses the case of Harvard chemistry professor Charles Lieber.
The core of the allegation against him is that he lied about this to federal authorities, including investigators from NIH and DOD, when they asked him about it. And that is a crime. And so, in light of that case, a lot of questions we've gotten revolve around, well, is it illegal for academics in the United States to collaborate with their counterparts in foreign countries? And the answer to that is no. And again, this has caused some confusion because while that is allowed, lying about that activity to federal authorities when you're required not to is not allowed.
While failure to disclose China tie is wrong, is criminal prosecution the right response to such actions? The Jason report addressed the issue of failure to disclose conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment. It said that what should be reported is not always clear, and the requirements for disclosure must be clearly communicated to everyone involved. In terms of failure to disclose, the Jason report said that it should be investigated and adjudicated by funding agencies and universities, with consequences similar to those currently in place for scientific misconduct, such as demotion, dismissal, and debarment. Only willfully supply incorrect information as part of a disclosure should be treated as a crime. So unless willfully deceptive, failure to disclose should not be prosecuted, in particular when the rules of disclosure were different or not clear. According to the DOJ Justice Manual, the grounds for declining prosecution include when there exists an adequate non-criminal alternative to prosecution. The Jason report clearly concluded that there is a non-criminal alternative to the criminal prosecution for non-disclosure of China ties, which is investigation and adjudication by funding agencies and universities, with consequences similar to those for scientific misconduct. Let's hear what Professor Maggie Lewis of Seton Hall University says.
You look at statements also made by U.S. Attorney Lelling in Massachusetts, where he has said very openly, yes, the China initiative will have a chilling effect, and that's a good thing. So there seems to also be, my reading of that, at least some people involved in the China initiative have said, well, we want to have essentially over-deterrence, that we think we need to have this heavy hammer of the criminal law. And I think that goes against the ethos that is in the Justice Manual, that the Department of Justice, the rules they have long set for themselves.
The heavy hammer of criminal law goes against the DOJ rules. In December 2020, the US Government Accountability Office issued a report on the funding agency's disclosure policies. It finds that government-wide guidance governing the grants process does not specifically mention or define non-financial conflicts, nor does it mention disclosing foreign affiliations, associations, or activities. The GAO report says, in the absence of agency-wide COI policies and definitions on non-financial interests, researchers may not fully understand what they need to report on their grant proposals. Yet we face criminal prosecution if we make an honest mistake in missing some disclosure requirements somewhere. This is scary. Personally, it makes me extremely nervous when applying for federal funding, in particular when the DOJ uses funding to determine the damage caused by your crime. The more federal funding you get, the more serious your crime is. Falsehood number 7, universities should secure their research like the industry does.
You look at people trying to take advantage of others' technology development, what becomes the weak link here? It's academia, because people come in and out of labs at universities, they want professors and students to come from other countries, and that's beneficial for everyone. But they don't have the same type of safeguards in place that, say, a technology company would that's invested millions or billions of dollars in this research and has an infrastructure to secure that research. Academia is much more loose in how it secures these things, and that emphasis on collaboration tends to leave them vulnerable.
People should understand that academia is not industry, is not government labs. In this book published by Aspen Strategy Group in 2019, former CIA Director John Deutsch wrote, "The risk of loss of technology to China is minor compared to the losses that will be incurred by restricting inquiry on university campuses." Why? Because America's innovation edge results not only from funding and talents, but also a competitive ecosystem. In the same book, writer and historian Walter Isaacson wrote that the triangular partnership between government, industry, and academia created an ecosystem that helped produce the technological revolution after World War II. Each partner has its unique functions, and the universities are where free, open, basic research is conducted. It precedes the proprietary and the classified research at the industrial and the government labs. If you crack down the free and open environment in academia and turn university into industrial or government labs, you will destroy the ecosystem that make America competitive in the first place. The former Los Alamos National Laboratory director said it perfectly. You don't want to put all research behind high walls.
We have to create the secrets. We create the secrets, and to create the secrets, you need a totally different atmosphere than from locking them up. We had a system at Los Alamos of what I call short fences and high fences. Keep as much of the laboratory with short fences, and then the stuff that's really, classified, you put high fences around them. But don't put a high fence around the whole place, because eventually you won't need a fence, because there'll be nothing left inside that others will want.
If you shut down open fundamental research, pretty soon you will have no secret to be stolen. To summarize, I hope my talk has succeeded in dispelling some frequently heard false narratives. It is false to say that Chinese scientists, academics, students spy for the Chinese government. The majority of them do not act as representatives of China. It is false to say that Chinese students are sent by China to the US to steal secrets for China. They create knowledge while they are students, and the majority of them remain in the US. It is false to say that US colleges and universities turn blind eyes to Chinese espionage. Most universities do fundamental research, which is open according to our national policy NSDD 189. It is false to say that academic collaborations help China leapfrog taxpayer-funded research. The US government says that scientific collaborations with China provide significant benefit to America. It is false to say that unclassified documents should be controlled because they create classified documents. Open fundamental research is key to US technological preeminence. It is contrary to DOJ rule to say that non-disclosure of China ties has to be criminally prosecuted. Jason report recommended a non-criminal alternative, which is to treat it as violations of research integrity with consequences similar to scientific misconduct. It is false to say that universities should secure their research like industry. Universities are not industry, and cracking down on openness in academia destroys American innovations ecosystem. In the name of securing taxpayer-funded research, the policies that deprive universities of Chinese students, persecute leading researchers who collaborate with Chinese colleagues, make it untenable for Chinese scientists to have a life and a career in the US, pursue complete academic decoupling with China, and restrict open fundamental research on university campuses are in fact destroying American science and technology. I urge everyone to rally around the Jason report, which represents the voices of scientific community adequately addresses the foreign influence on fundamental research and should be the basis for our national policy on scientific relationship with China. There is an urgent need for all of us to speak up to defend Chinese scientists against injustice, to safeguard open fundamental research on university campuses, and to protect Americans' research enterprise from irreparable damages. Thank you for your attention.
Professor Shi, thank you for this really wonderful, wonderful presentation. It's so thoroughgoing. And one of the things that comes through is the risk of decoupling. And you made it quite explicit, as did the head of Los Alamos and others. The risk is enormous. For those of us who are not in the hard sciences, can you talk a little bit about the nature of collaboration and maybe highlight specific examples from your own work, from work of others that you're familiar with, that has really benefited from a connection with Chinese researchers, Chinese institutions?
Well, first of all, we need talents, right? And that involves interactions with international, communities. And so that's number one. So you're asking about the benefits of collaborating with scientists around the world. The fact is that when we are doing fundamental research, we try to invent something which do not exist. Right? So there's no clear way of getting there. So very often when we are trying to make discoveries or inventions, we think about that all the time, and sometimes we got stuck, or and sometimes maybe it goes to a wrong direction. And for that, the interaction with anybody, all scientists, often is very, very important. It's very common that when you talk to somebody who actually may not be as advanced as your lab is in the subject, but something they are talking about can give you that stimulus that you understand, oh yeah, that is a good idea, or that is a good direction to go. So again, as I said, we're not trying to repeat something which is already in the books. We're trying to discover something which is new. And for that, interaction with fellow scientists is very important. Of course, there is another aspect. That is, nowadays we are doing the science which is at the scale that is unprecedented compared to all the science before us. So very often they require a huge team collaborating with each other, or at a major scientific facility that only can be built when the whole world put their resources together. Like a Higgs boson in this huge accelerator in Europe, or as I said, the NSF Beijing office director talked about that. There are these world-class facilities that are built in China that the American scientists would have access to through the collaborations with the scientists in China. So the benefit, I don't claim that I'm the best person to talk about the benefits of international collaboration. That there are many prominent scientists who will tell you many examples why collaboration, international collaboration, is so important. But as you said, from my own personal experience, it is very important. Even if you are collaborating with people who may not be doing as well in the field that I am expert in, because sometimes this stimulation is very important. Right? You get an idea from somewhere you don't expect.
Exactly. They may have a perspective, a question, may spark something in your own thinking. Now, Professor Shi, you had, of course, this horrible experience of being arrested, having your life turned upside down, and as you said, you and your family continue to have that in the back of your mind, and that experience and your subsequent look at how other people have fared has caused you to be a little bit gun shy, a little bit nervous when applying for some grants. Can you identify things that you have chosen not to do, or collaborators that you've chosen not to work with? Not in detail, but is there work that you have not gone after because of that experience?
Absolutely. And what I can say is my research program is much, much smaller now compared to when I was arrested. I had much fewer grants and much fewer students in my group. The reason is when I apply for funding, I have to check a lot of boxes, and I have to sign a lot of forms, and everything that I do, I feel scared, right? Because anything that is not perfect could be a reason. We see this happen again and again and again, right? In the case of Professor Gang Chen, in the case of Franklin Tao from University of Kansas, and as I said, 9 cases in the China Initiative website, and adding 2 more, right. So 11 cases. They were all about non-disclosure, right? So in the case of Professor Gang Chen, and so his colleague was saying that his CV is like 160, or I don't remember the number, many pages long, which listed all these things that he's doing professionally around the world. And then when you apply proposals for grant, you have 2 pages that list, your appointments and things like that. And there is just no way to squeeze everything in there. However, if you miss something, they can charge you. Well, they are charging you for misstatement, false statement. And so that's very, very scary. Right? That's very scary. So as a result of that, I'm trying to apply for funding in collaborative projects. So team up with my colleagues so that I will not be the person who signed those forms. And I would rather be in a team as a co-principal investigator. But of course, that limits what I can do in my research.
Are there people who won't work with you now?
Well, no. Well, I have not. Of course, if you want to collaborate with people, there has to be situations that people are all, willing to work together, and that's of course much fewer opportunities than if I apply funding based on my own ideas. So I would not say that people don't want to work with me, but I will say that the probability of funding somebody whose research kind of makes sense to be collaborating in a project is much lower.
Yeah, you obviously, if you have access to funding, grants, and things like that, you're able to bring in more students, more collaborators, that sort of thing.
That is now, yes, indeed.
Now, one of the important points here, because one of the participants in our discussion here has raised this question, and it's a good one, that you were arrested in 2015, and there were others, of course, before 2016, 2017, when the Trump administration came to power. And so your arrest predates the formal China initiative. But your experience suggests that these policies and these practices were already in motion.
Yes, indeed. And I think I said that in all the occasions that I comment on this, that this is not a partisan issue, right? This is injustice issue. This is a racial profiling issue, or this is the issue of academic freedom. It is not a partisan issue. And so now we have a different, we have an administration that is of different party. But we have seen that the new administration is considering the Trump administration's policy, China policy, is overall the right, and maybe how to go about it is different. So I would hope the new administration would have a more sensible policies concerning these, policies about the non-disclosure and so on and so forth. Because as I said, these policies hurt American interest, right? You are claiming to protect American research, but in reality, these policies actually destroy American science and technology.
Yeah, the point about this being before the recent administration is that this is not an entirely new issue. The question of targeting or over-determining, in the language that Maggie Lewis used, over-determining, looking primarily at Chinese scientists with the expectation that they are the ones most likely to engage in this, not, without any evidence of that. And this is an important point, and that's the central argument of criminalizing China, that you're labeling a country, you're labeling a people, as opposed to focusing on a particular problem. Now, I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, let me add some information. Actually, there is research published that did a statistical study of the Economic Espionage Act, and it found that since 2009, the year when Obama became president, the cases against Chinese or Asian shoot up sharply, and so this policy of targeting Asian American or Chinese American actually start when President Obama took office.
Yeah. So as you've highlighted here, there's research that suggests, first of all, that the volume of economic espionage, the cost of that espionage, has gone up, and then the work of Andrew Kim and others showing that the majority of these prosecutions were of Asian Americans, particularly Chinese Americans, in that look. Now, you've highlighted that the university is different. The university is different from a corporate research lab, where the corporation is looking, of course, to maximize its economic return on that kind of investment. Or the corporation may have been hired to produce something for a defense, some sort of national security purpose. Can you clarify this? You've already said that you're looking to push fundamental research. You're looking to expand the frontiers of research, but that criticism that universities are too open compared to corporations. Can you take that on again?
Well, as I said, that's nonsense. That's really nonsense. And in university, we do fundamental research. And of course, there are universities that does classify research, but there are clear protocols and procedures to protect those research. And beyond that, what we're doing is our fundamental research. As I said, many university policies made it very clearly. If I cannot talk about it, if our faculty cannot publish it, we don't want your money. And so everything we do, we publish it. You know, the NIH director said it perfectly. What we do in science, we publish it. And as a matter of fact, there is a requirement, you know, for people who apply for funding. They all understand that there is this data management plan where you have to make very clear how are you going to share your taxpayer-funded research with other people, right? So when you submit paper to some journals, they require that you deposit your data into some places so that people can access it. So as the NIH director says, we're all about transparency, right? We put all the result out there. So why do they need to steal, right? They can sit there and read your papers and learn what you're doing.
And as you just highlighted, not just read your summation, not just read your conclusions about the work, but if it's funded, and you know, again, a requirement for many organizations now is that the data itself, the underlying data itself, be submitted so that it can be properly reviewed, evaluated.
Exactly. Well, exactly, and the requirement actually for publication is that other people can repeat it and can reproduce it. And the requirement for filing a patent is that the people with the same skill can reproduce it. That's exactly what publication is all about. And other people who read it should be able to reproduce it. And, you know, they don't need to steal.
And you know very well about that process, having earned several patents on your own. Professor Shi, you highlighted really just the last year or two of the administration's comments about Chinese students. And here we're talking about primarily students from China, perhaps visiting scholars. But of course, when you start casting this widely, there's no discrimination. There's no distinction between somebody like yourself with a US passport and somebody who, you know, may have just arrived from China. But the national security strategy of the Trump administration that was announced in December of 2017, there's a very clear statement of the direction they intend to go, because they argue that China's advances economically, technologically, had come because of American openness, the openness of the American economy and access to American universities. Now, you've already highlighted that, you know, if you assume that some portion of this incoming student population, the visiting scholars, even the faculty themselves, if you assume that some portion of them are engaged in illicit behavior, and then you go after them and it creates a culture of fear, are we doing harm to American interest? Are we making the United States less hospitable, less welcoming? Do you know of scholars who may have chosen not to pursue careers in the United States because of these kinds of fears?
Well, you know, I don't know exact, particular examples, but I'm sure there are people who take that, hostility into consideration. But I want to say that that racial profiling is wrong. And so in any group of people, there are bad actors. But as the Jason report said, that people should be judged on their own action, not based on where they come from or the actions of a Chinese government or Chinese Communist Party. And that's a fundamental fairness, right? That's the everybody is equal in front of law, and that's the ideal that we all believe in. And if you profile a whole group of people based on their races, their ethnicity, that is wrong. And that's contrary to the American ideal. And that's a bad policy, as you said. Many people would consider that to be, hostile towards them, and then why should they come? And by the way, I want to mention another fact of all these policies is that there are already many people who are forced to resign and go back to China, right? And these people are doing research in China, not in the United States. And I have to say, for example, I am doing much less research than I used to do. And I'll have to say that, although I don't know exactly what happened with Charles Lieber, with Gang Chen, with Franklin Tao, their cases are still ongoing. But I can say that Charles Lieber is not doing nanoscience in the United States. Gang Chen is not doing thermal conduction study in the United States. And Franklin Tao is not doing chemistry research in the United States. I mean, these are the direct impact of these policies, of targeting these outstanding scientists for allegedly fail to disclose their activities in China.
Again, without getting into the details of those, ongoing cases, presumably one reason they're not doing whatever research they had been doing is that now they're investing a lot of time and energy talking to lawyers.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. A couple of people in the have submitted questions that make reference to a McCarthy era case, the famous case of Chen Shui-sun, and the fact that he was essentially placed under house arrest here in Southern California, and eventually chose to go to China, where he participated, of course, in helping China develop its own nuclear programs. And that's what people are asking about. Are we at risk in the United States of closing the door to talent that would prefer to stay here?
Absolutely. And just one example is my friends at the Peking University. They were absolutely delighted to tell me that this year they have the best graduate class for a long time, right? Because of course there is pandemic, but there's also this hostile atmosphere in the United States, and as a result, all these best students decide to stay in the U.S. In China. So that is of course a loss for the United States. So that's what I want everybody to take away. That is, these policies hurt the United States. It does not protect the American research.
And we have a couple of, and we're only going to have just another couple of minutes, but we have a couple of questions concerning your personal situation, and then an overarching question. So the two questions about your personal situation is, did you ever give up on the United States? Did you ever consider returning to China, the land of your birth, as a consequence of this? And another person who has had his own dealings with the FBI asks about your lawsuit against the agent who you allege knowingly misrepresented the case. And the question is whether or not you have an update on your own case. But the first question is, did this sour you on America?
Well, first of all, I want to say that the freedom of movement is a fundamental human right. So for anybody to decide where they want to work, where they want to live, this is their human rights. And but of course, this is a very important decision that people have to make, and that has to take into account many, many factors, right? A career opportunity, family situations, and many, many factors. So what I can say is that, for now I am here, and I don't know what's going to happen, 5-10 years down the road. But I think, America never claimed to be a perfect place, right? So even when when United States started, people devote themselves to build a more perfect union. That means that we are not claiming that we are a perfect union already. We all work and fight to make it a more perfect union. So that's what I am doing, and I'm speaking up so that more people are aware of the problems, so people can speak up and hopefully help change the policy that hurts our country and make the society more just. And so I said many times that the fact that we have the right to do this is what this country is so great about, right? So we have to, do our duties and participate in these civic activities. And so in terms of my own case, yes, we are suing the government, and we don't have any progress for quite some time, and we are still waiting for the judge to decide whether the case should go forward. Right? We filed the lawsuit, and the government responded saying that we didn't discriminate, and this is we are immune, and he didn't suffer this or that damage and so on. So we responded again, and now it's up to the judge to decide whether the case should go forward or not.
And thank you for that update. And I, for one, just speaking for myself, I'm very happy that you are still part of the United States research community, part of this important discussion. You have definitely contributed a lot to it. And the big question that comes out of a number of things that people have raised in the Q&A is we've highlighted some of the costs of over pursuit of Chinese Americans and others. And we have also looked at, that this is not a new phenomenon. What can be done? And you did this in the conclusion of your talk. What can we do to try to mitigate the damage and, as you suggest, create a more perfect future?
I think one thing that everybody can do is to help speak up and help spread the word that such injustice exists and such bad policy exists. And talk to your friends, talk to people in your so-called social circle. And the more people who are aware of the problem, the more likely something could happen. Right? So this is definitely something you can do. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, and talk to your congressmen, talk to your senators, and let them know that this policy is hurting us and it needs to change. So I think, when I talk in this, for example, in today's event, I could reach maybe a few people, but I think this is what people need to do. So I reach a few people, and these few people hopefully they can go talk to their friends, their family, so more people get aware of the problem. And we just have to keep doing this so that it can snowball into a big voice, so that the policymakers, the congressmen, the senators, they all understand the policy that some people are pursuing now is a bad policy and need to be changed.
Thank you so much. And so, Professor Shi, we're happy to be part of that snowball. And we want the people who are watching now and those who will watch the recording later to share this with others, to share it with friends and colleagues, and to discuss this. This is in no way to suggest that there isn't espionage. It's in no way to suggest that there is no economic intellectual property theft, but it is to suggest that the policies currently in place and the practices that stem from those are counterproductive and are not in America's best interest, are not in the interest of science, and are concerned that we continue to move forward. Professor Shi, thank you for giving up a chunk of your Lunar New Year Eve. We feel really lucky to have you with us. And for all those who have participated through questions and just by being a part of this, thanks to all of you. We wish you the absolute best possible Year of the Ox. We look forward to having you with us again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and Happy New Year.